There's one other place that's very interesting that this Hebrew superlative shows up now that you're starting to get a little feeling for what it means. Um, I'm going from memory here, so I might be in the wrong chapter. I'm looking for the passage. I think maybe it's Exodus 17. It says, I am the Lord that healeth thee. Are you guys familiar with that one? I'm going to do a little search here on eSword. So you'll see as a search function. So if I type in a word that I'm fairly certain would be in that passage. All right, so Exodus 15, I am the Lord that healeth thee. You see why I like the eSword. It's very convenient. So here you get in Exodus 15, this very well-known verse again. You see plaques on people's walls. It's preached about, right? And it has the same exact phrase in the Hebrew. If you will diligently hearken. That's that Shema Tishma, same as in Deuteronomy 28, Hebrew superlative. If you will diligently hearken, and then it has, and will do what's right, so follow through on what you Shema Tishma with your actions, and will give ear to his commandments and keep his statutes. So it gives you the conditions. And then it says, I will put none of these diseases upon you, which I brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth thee. So what you're looking at there is a courts of heaven decree, a Hebrew superlative, and how do we get it executed upon the earth? We meet the conditions. So the very first condition in that verse, and it would be a longer study to get into each one of those, but is this Shema Tishma. So not a fleshly striving, not if I exhaust myself diligently listening, right? As you might be misled in the English and think I've got to, burn the candle at both ends and so forth. No, it's repeating the word Shema as a continuous action. It's what I was just describing with the Yada offering. It's staying in a place of constant, continuous faith. And what am I saying? I'm saying if I supernaturally listen to God as I would if I were in heaven, face to face, with all the demons and all the hindrances and all of that removed, if I was able to listen in that way, then the healing would chase me down the street. And this is exactly what we see when we see a revival or a renewal. Quite often what we'll see is someone who's been praying for 10 years for something will go to the revival service and they get healed. And they're not even looking for it maybe at that time. They're just worshiping the Lord and it chases them down. So you get that Deuteronomy 28, the blessing chasing you down. And what's happened there in the Hebrew is you've reached a place of Shema Tishma. That's what's happened. And so that blessing that's been waiting in heaven to come upon the earth for the condition to be met, now the condition's met and it's like the breakthroughs just come. They chase you down. No more of this striving and why isn't it working? Why isn't it? But now all of a sudden, boom, 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 breakthrough after breakthrough after. That's why they call it a revival, and millions of people flock because they're hoping they're going to get their breakthrough too. And in that atmosphere, what's happening there is you're getting the Hebrew superlative expressed. So it's a very powerful concept in the Hebrew to understand the Hebrew superlative. I'm going to give you one more and then we're going to call it a day. So this one is in Exodus 34. So let me bring that up. I'll put it on recording later. So those of you who want to review, I do edit it a little bit, but you'll get the essence of it in a review later if you need to. But notes help too. I recommend it. Now here in this passage, Exodus 34 verse 6, it's a well-known passage, but you're probably not aware in the English until now that the Hebrew superlative's taking place here. You see where the Lord passed Moses says, God, show me your glory. So what's he asking for? He's asking to see God as though he were in heaven face to face with God. And what do people say? Well, if a man sees God, he's not going to live, right? So if you saw God with the veil removed completely like that, normally you would die. But Moses asked for this thing. And it says, the Lord passed by before him and proclaimed, the Lord, the Lord. But in Hebrew, you look over here and what does it say? Yehovah, Yehovah. It repeats the name of Yehovah twice. It's a Hebrew superlative. So what you have there hidden in the Hebrew is you're getting what Moses got there was he got to see Yehovah as though he were in heaven. Just a glimpse, but as though he were in heaven face to face with the Lord. It's the Hebrew superlative. So you're literally getting in the text there. And this Hebrew superlative takes place. I haven't actually got an exact count because I keep finding new ones. I'll stumble upon them that I didn't know about. But I'm going to say 50 times. It's probably more. So it's all over the place. But I find this one very interesting, right? Because there you get right in the context of the passage itself, right? Moses is saying, God, show me your glory or show me your presence as though I were in heaven, but I want to see it on the earth. I want to see you, Lord, as though I had died and gone to heaven, and now I'm looking at you face to face in heaven. And it says in Exodus 34:6 that when the Lord passed before Moses, it says Yehovah, Yehovah. So there you get the Hebrew superlative. I think that's cool. Just like the Shema, like I said, if you say one word, you know the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So if I say the Modeh Ani to a Jewish person, they know the whole thing. They know what I'm saying. Right? And usually you just say the masculine, but people know if you're a woman, you'll say Modeh Ani, right? But that's the only difference. The rest of it's all the same, whether you're male or female, doesn't matter. And there's a whole thing about before you, Lord, my King, and so on. But I'll post it. And but just remember the attitude, the spirit behind it, right? Because it's that yada faith that gets up and says, I'm going to risk my heart by being all in and actually believing that today is going to be the day that he shows up. Today is going to be the day I get my Isaac. Today is going to be the day that right? And that's hard on a human heart when you say, well, yesterday he didn't, and the day before he didn't, and the day before that he didn't. And I would say that's the number one reason in my personal experience why I've had pastors look me in the eye and tell me that they're sticking with their plan B, Ishmael run church, because they tell me, and they'll usually tell me a wounded story of how they got their hopes up and they went all in and they put it all on the line and they said, I'm going to do it. And they did it maybe even twice or three times and got burned. And now they've given up. They're not getting their hopes up. So they're going to play it safe, right? And that's why I say it's being little, right? I'm going to go back to mommy's house and I'm going to let someone else pay the rent and someone else take care of those scary things. And I'm just going to live in the basement and play computer games and work a part-time pizza delivery job. And, I mean, I'm painting a picture, but that's what a lot of churches do.
A lot of people do that with their healing as well.
Yeah, because to get your hopes up every single morning and get up and say, I'm thanking you, God, that today's the day I'm going to be healed, and not have it be lip service, but from the heart. I really believe you're going to show up and do it today. Like I'm in that kind of faith that it could happen at any moment. To go up altar call after altar call. They call you up front. We're going to pray for you. I've been prayed for 157 times for this thing, right? But the Yada faith says, yeah, I'm going up there. This is going to be the time that he does it. That's right. So what we do is we subtly let the devil get in there and diminish our faith little by little, like the frog in the boiling water that warms up slowly.
Yes.
And then we don't even realize how much we've diminished in our faith. And that's what the Modeh Ani is to get up every morning. And that's what the blessing over our food is supposed to be, is to remind us every time we sit down to eat, I'm doing the Yada, like my heart's in, all in, I'm invested. It's as real as the food on my plate. That's how real these promises that God's given me are. Just any moment, they're going to come out of the kitchen and put it on the plate, right? You get up every morning, you position your heart that way. And you can only do that in God, because the human heart, without the assistance of the Holy Spirit, if you do that every day, you're going to get discouraged after a bit, because things don't always come, right? And you wait and you wait and you wait. And that's the story of Leah. When you read it, is she didn't allow that waiting. She was trying to get Jacob's heart. She was trying to get him to love her. And if you read the story, I'll tell the whole story some other time, but if you go to Israel, where you have the cave of Machpelah, which means the double cave, because the Jewish people believe that there's two parts to the cave, and the inner part is where Adam and Eve were buried, and then the outer part is where the patriarchs are buried and the matriarchs. So you have Abraham and Sarah buried there, and you have Isaac and Rebekah buried there, and then you have Jacob buried there. But the question is, which wife is he going to be buried with in this place of honor where you have Adam and Eve and Abraham and Sarah? I mean, this is the highest honor he can give his wife at the end of their life, is who's going to be buried with him. Is it going to be one or the other or both? And he buries Rachel by the side of the road, and he buries Leah in the tomb. And that's a hint. The romance, right? That Leah got her request from God, her yada, because it wasn't just the children she was after her husband's heart. And it records later in Genesis that Jacob specifically requested that Leah's remains would be buried in the tomb. He had fallen in love with her, and that was her yada faith. She got up every morning. Right? Remember, this is over years with Reuben and Simeon and Levi. She's like, surely his heart will be mine now, and it wasn't, and it wasn't, and it wasn't. Imagine that, day after day after day. And here she is, the blind one, the disabled one, not the preferable one. And here's Rachel. I don't know what she was like, and God blessed her. But I mean, I know, I picture, like in our today's terms, she was the athletic, fun-loving, whatever. I don't know. And she was the peppy one. And here's Leah waiting for Jacob to notice her. And Rachel's getting all the attention, and she's trusting God. And when she got to the place of the yada faith, see, that's what's hidden in the Hebrew there. She finally gave up the striving and said, I'm going to get up every morning, and I'm going to say yada, that my husband is going to love me. And then by the end of her life,
he did.
So that's something the rabbis usually preach on. You don't hear a lot in Christian churches, but that's a common sermon in the synagogue. They preach about Leah and that whole getting into the yada faith as a wife, or as a husband for that matter, right? Because it represents all of that.
No.
So there's a little Jewish flavor for you.
I love it.
Yeah. And that's why on the Sabbath, they'll say, be like Rachel, be like Leah, when the husband prays the blessing over the wife every Sabbath, right? And that's all in there.
Wow.
Do the yada faith, right? Not the yada, yada, yada faith. The yada.
Yada.
The yada, yada, yada. That's a little cynical. It's like I get up, instead of saying, see, this is a Jewish, like, kind of way of communicating. This is what the rabbi would say. They'd probably say with a rabbi accent, right? He'd say, well, you got the Modeh Ani that said with the yada faith, and then you got the Modeh Ani that say with the yada, yada, yada. You might not even finish it. You just say Modeh Ani, yada, 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 God. Right? That's the cynical, I've kind of given up on the dream, but I'm going to go through the motions, the yada, yada, yada. Or you have the yada.
Delight, right? Or duty.
And do you guys have time for one more story? I'll tell you a story if you want one. Yeah, okay. So this is the rabbi told the story. It's not my story. I'm repeating his story. But this, I can't even remember what rabbi it started with. It's gone around. A lot of rabbis tell this story now. But there was an original rabbi. And I think he was in New York, and somebody knocks on the door one night, and it's kind of late. It's 11 at night or something. And there's a guy from his congregation that he hasn't seen in, I don't know, probably once or twice in the last several years. But he knows who he is, right? He's like, I haven't seen you in forever. What are you doing at my door at 11 o'clock? He says, Rabbi, I'm in a crisis. He says, I had to come tonight because tomorrow is the ceremony to name our child. And that's huge, right? And Judaism, like I said, the destiny of the child, all of that, you pray about it. It's supposed to be prophetic. You're supposed to know. He says, my wife and I are at an impasse. We've been arguing about what to name the child, and we can't agree. And the rabbi says, oh. So he says, what name have you selected? What name has your wife selected? He says, well, the name I want is after my uncle, Moshe. And he says, my uncle Moshe, he was an alcoholic, but he was a good man, and on his deathbed, he repented. He wanted to serve the Lord, and I want to honor him, even though he was an alcoholic. My wife says, no, I don't want him named after Moshe, your uncle that was an alcoholic. Like, no way. We're naming him after somebody who had lived a more honorable life than that. She says, we're naming him after my cousin Moshe, who was an honorable, faithful person. So the rabbi said, your wife wants to name him Moshe and you want to name him Moshe. What's the problem here? And he says, well, which Moshe? So the rabbi says, okay. He says, I'm going to go into my study and I'm going to pray about this, and I'll come back in 5 minutes and I'll give you your answer. Does this sound like a Jewish story? It is, right? So this is what you get in the synagogue. So he comes back and he says, I've got your answer. The Lord spoke to me. You're supposed to name him Moshe. And he says, oy vey. He says, what does that mean? He says, which Moshe? He says, you name him Moshe. Your wife can think it's her Moshe. You can think it's your Moshe. When the child gets older, the child will decide which Moshe it is. So the lesson is that Y in the road I was talking about. So that's a rabbi story for you. So we got it.
You spent so much time redoing it.
Excellent.
Shalom, shalom, everyone.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.